Have you ever thought about how close you are to the edge of your moral abyss? You know, there's a line that separates a well-mannered, pious citizen from a deranged monster capable of spitting on all moral principles. Imagine this. You're calmly sitting or lying down watching this video when suddenly the rules of decency stop applying. Will you remain that sweet, innocent person you think you are? Or will you spit on all the moral principles that once seemed sacred to you? Once, I came across a book that shook me to my core. It's called The Lucifer Effect by Philip Zimbardo, which not only asks why good people turn bad, but also slaps you in the face with a harsh answer. So, let's walk through this dark, winding labyrinth of the human psyche. You, dear viewer, like to think of yourself as a good person. Maybe you return lost wallets, help elderly women cross the street, donate to charity, or volunteer at a local animal shelter on weekends. But let's be honest, have you ever taken something that didn't belong to you simply because you knew you wouldn't get caught? A pen from the office, a neighbor's Wi-Fi, a fork from the cafeteria? I'm not here to shame you, but to lead you to what the author of this book makes clear. Evil is not some distant, abstract force. No, it's a slippery slope that starts with small, seemingly insignificant violations. Consider the case of Ivan Frederick, whom you may not know, but whose story you should hear. Frederick was an ordinary American boy who loved baseball and his mom's apple pie, but then he became a guard at the infamous Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq, where prisoners were tortured, brutally tortured. The catch is that before his assignment to this prison, Frederick was just an ordinary guy. He wasn't born in Iraq. He was a man with a decent IQ, stable mental health, and a love for his country. But Abu Ghraib, that place turned him into something vile, a man who crossed all his moral boundaries and tortured people himself. If you think you're any different, you're in for a disappointment. The truth is, the line between good and evil is much blurrier than you'd like to believe. You might still cling to the comforting belief that you're inherently a good person, that your personality is as unchanging as a star in the night sky. But let me shatter that illusion. The idea that your character is immutable, that who you are remains constant in all situations, is pure fiction. Who you are is not eternal. It's not carved in stone. It's written in sand, constantly shifting under the influence of the tides of your environment. Think about how you behave with your friends compared to how you behave around a child. Are you the same person in both scenarios? Of course not. Now let's take it a step further. Imagine you're participating in the Milgram experiment, a cult classic, though deeply disturbing study of human behavior. You're the teacher tasked with delivering electric shocks to a student for every mistake they make. The shocks start small, but before you know it, they escalate to life-threatening 450 volts. The student screams, begs you to stop, but you continue. Why? Simply because the guy in the white lab coat who's running the experiment told you to. In these conditions, a staggering 65% of participants, ordinary people like you, applied the maximum voltage to people they'd never met before. They weren't sadists. They were ordinary people, swayed by the situation and the authority figure above them. What Zimbardo tells us leaves no doubt. The right, or rather wrong, circumstances can turn any of you into a ruthless tool. And if you're still with me, let's talk about something even darker. Zimbardo didn't just talk about this, he put it into practice. Or rather, he conducted one of the most controversial psychological experiments in history, the Stanford Prison Experiment. Picture this: 24 college students, all clean-cut, well-behaved, middle-class, psychologically stable, are placed in a simulated prison environment. Half are randomly assigned the role of guards, the other half become prisoners. The guards are given uniforms, batons, mirrored sunglasses that hide their eyes, and thus their humanity. The prisoners are stripped naked, hosed down, and given numbers instead of names. It doesn't take long for this psychological theater to turn into a full-blown nightmare. The guards, these supposedly normal, decent guys, start reveling in their power. They force prisoners to urinate in buckets, strip them naked, and lock them in dark cells as punishment. One guard even earned the nickname John Wayne for his particularly harsh methods. And all this happened in just 6 days. 6 days, after which the experiment had to be shut down. Under certain conditions, your morality can crumble faster than a sandcastle in a hurricane. I know you think you'd act differently in the same situation, but the truth is you really don't know that, do you? So, what tips the scales one way or the other? Why do people like Frederick or the Stanford guards go off the rails while others remain sane? Zimbardo points to one particularly vile ingredient in the recipe for evil: obedience to authority. Whether it's a person, an institution, or a set of rules, authority can push even the most righteous among you to commit inhumane acts. Let's revisit the Milgram experiment. Its participants, as always, weren't inherently evil. They were simply following orders, believing they were contributing to the greater good. This obedience to authority didn't start with the Milgram experiment, and it certainly didn't end there. Just look at the mass slaughter at Jonestown to see this in action. Jim Jones, the charismatic leader who initially championed utopian ideals, gradually turned into a tyrant. His followers didn't see it coming. They trusted him, obeyed him, even as he handed them cups of cyanide-laced punch. That day, over 900 people died, not because they were evil, but because they were obedient. Here's a question for you. How many times have you obeyed an order, not because it was right, but because it was the easiest thing to do? How often do you question authority in your life, or do you just assume they must know better, that they're right by default? Maybe it's time to start asking those uncomfortable questions before you find yourself knee-deep in the quicksand of morality. But it's not just about authority, is it? There's another sneaky companion on the path to evil: the loss of personal responsibility. Imagine this scenario. You're participating in the Milgram experiment, and the tension rises as the student in the next room screams in pain. But you don't have to worry, right? The guy in the white coat said he'd take full responsibility. So it's not really your fault if something goes wrong. This concept, known as de-individuation, is a devilishly slippery slope. It's why rioters in a crowd wear masks, soldiers don uniforms, and internet trolls hide behind anonymous accounts. Once you feel your actions can't be traced back to you, shedding the shackles of morality becomes frighteningly easy. Zimbardo left an abandoned car in the Bronx, a fairly crime-ridden area, and within hours it was stripped and destroyed. But in another neighborhood where people were more likely to be recognized, the same car remained untouched, as if invisible. This is a stark reminder that when the veil of anonymity drops, when responsibility is deflected or diffused, evil finds fertile ground to grow. How many of you hiding behind your screens have done or said something you'd never dare to do face to face? It's easy to hide, easy to become someone else when no one's watching, but is that someone the person you'd want to meet in the mirror? And then there's the factor of dehumanization, the final nail in the coffin of empathy. How do you get someone to commit atrocities against their fellow humans? Easy. You convince them they're not really human. This psychological trick has justified some of history's worst horrors. Zimbardo highlights the chilling results of Albert Bandura's study at Stanford. Students were asked to control and punish another group based on their decisions. But here's the catch. The people chosen as punishers were told something about one of the groups they were to punish. They were told that the people in this group weren't white and fluffy. They were literally dehumanized. And what do you think? Naturally, the punishments applied to this dehumanized group were far harsher than those applied to the other group, who were described as understanding and kind. This is the same twisted logic that fueled the Nanjing massacre, where Japanese soldiers, seeing Chinese civilians as subhuman, committed unimaginable cruelty. You'd like to think this kind of dehumanization belongs to the distant past or exists only in the hearts of those other evil people. But take a closer look at your world today. How often do you hear people called animals, scum, parasites? How easy it becomes once those labels are slapped on to turn a blind eye to suffering, to justify cruelty. And here's the terrifying truth. The moment you stop seeing someone as a full-fledged human being is the moment you open the door to your own dark potential. But wait, there's more. Words, as they say, can be weapons, and when used effectively, they can mask even the most horrific abuses. A whole language of euphemisms emerges, a sanitized vocabulary that turns torture into enhanced interrogation and genocide into ethnic cleansing. This is the linguistic equivalent of sweeping bloody crumbs under the rug of human morality. Zimbardo explores how euphemisms and polished ideologies serve as cover for atrocities, allowing perpetrators to sleep soundly at night. But let's go back to the Milgram experiment. Participants were told they were contributing to science, helping to improve memory, when in fact they were inflicting real pain on another person. They thought they were doing something good, something necessary. The U.S. invasion of Iraq and the subsequent torture at Abu Ghraib weren't presented as atrocities. They were framed as necessary actions in the fight against terrorism, as necessary evils to protect national security. Soldiers operating under this ideological cover saw themselves as the good guys, even as they committed acts the world would later condemn. This is a grim reminder that when narratives are twisted, when language is softened, evil can follow, rationalized, justified, even glorified. So, the next time you hear someone distorting words to make something vile sound virtuous, ask yourself what's really happening beneath that polished rhetoric. But let's not descend into despair just yet. If Zimbardo's journey into the dark corners of the human mind has taught us anything, it's that we still have a choice. You may be walking a tightrope over an abyss, but that doesn't mean you have to fall. The capacity for evil may be within you, but so is the capacity for heroism. So what does it take to resist the pull of darkness and the forces dragging you toward immoral behavior? The answer lies in personal responsibility. It's about making your own decisions, even when the situation allows you to hide behind anonymity or authority. In the Milgram experiment, some participants, despite the pressure, refused to continue. Instead, they chose to walk away. They didn't do this because they were stronger or better. They did it because they decided to take responsibility for their actions, even when no one else did. This is a reminder that the ability to resist isn't something you're born with. It's something you choose, moment by moment, situation by situation. But here's the catch. You have to be vigilant. You have to be ready to stand up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when everyone else is sitting down. And that, my friends, is what separates a potential hero from a potential monster. So how do you resist the pull of authority when it leads you down a dark path? The answer may seem simple, but in practice, it's far from it. You have to question authority. Yes, my friends, question everything. Just because someone wears a uniform, holds a title, or speaks confidently doesn't mean they're infallible. Zimbardo's work shows us time and again that those in power, if left unchecked, can push good people to do very bad things. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that those in authority must know better, that they must act in the best interests of all. But history is rife with atrocities committed by those who blindly followed orders. From the tragic obedience observed in the Milgram experiment to the blind allegiance that led to the massacre at Jonestown. Authority, if unchecked, can be a dangerous guide. But you're not powerless in the face of authority. You have a voice, you have the right to say no, to walk away, to resist. So, the next time someone tells you to do something that conflicts with your conscience, take a step back, think, ask the hard questions. That's the difference between being a blind follower and being a hero. But amidst all this talk of evil, there's another side. The heroes. Those who choose to act boldly when everyone else is paralyzed by fear or obedience. Zimbardo doesn't just leave us in a pit of despair. He offers us a way out, a path to good. And it all starts with action. What sets a hero apart from everyone else? It's not superhuman strength or unshakable confidence. It's the willingness to act when others stand by. Take the story of Wesley Autry, the hero of the New York City subway. When a man suffering a seizure fell onto the subway tracks, Autry didn't hesitate. He didn't wait for someone else to take charge. He jumped down, pushed the man into the trench between the rails, and covered him as the train roared overhead. While others froze in terror, he risked his life to save a stranger. That's the essence of heroism. Not grand gestures on a battlefield, but simple, decisive actions in everyday life. It's about not shifting responsibility onto others, but choosing the right path, even when it's terrifying. Heroism isn't something out of reach for ordinary people. It's a choice, and it's one you have to make every day. And this brings us to the most uncomfortable truth Zimbardo drives home. You and I, we all carry within us the seeds of both good and evil. We are walking contradictions, capable of lofty acts of heroism and base acts of cruelty. The choice between these two extremes isn't a one-time event. It's a constant struggle, a daily battle. One moment you can be a hero, the next, under the right circumstances, you can become a villain. Zimbardo urges us to acknowledge this duality within ourselves, to understand that the potential for evil isn't just in some far-off, backward country. It's inside each of us. This isn't a call to despair, but a call to vigilance. By understanding this duality, by accepting that you have the potential for both good and evil, you become better equipped to manage your actions, to make decisions that align with your true nature. This awareness doesn't just make you a better person. It makes you more mindful, more ready to act thoughtfully. It's not about fearing who you might become. It's about choosing, every day, who you want to be. And as we near the end of this exploration, it's important to understand that the line between good and evil isn't just a philosophical concept. It's a practical, everyday reality. Zimbardo's work is a stark reminder that this line can shift, can blur, depending on the choices we make and the situations we find ourselves in. But here's the thing. Knowing this, understanding this, means you have a power that many lack. You're not just another face in the crowd, blindly following orders or succumbing to the pressure of your environment. You're aware of the factors that can lead you down a dark path, and with that awareness comes responsibility. You have the power to resist, to act, to be the hero of your own story. And this isn't just some lofty ideal, it's a necessity. In a world where the boundaries of morality are constantly tested, where authority figures and societal pressures can push you toward evil, understanding these forces gives you the tools to push back. So, whose side are you on? Are you ready to choose light when darkness looms? Are you ready to be the one who acts when others hesitate? Because in the end, it's not just about avoiding evil, it's about actively choosing good. To sum it up, The Lucifer Effect isn't just a book about the dark side of human nature. It's a call, a challenge to each of us to confront the potential for evil within ourselves and make a conscious choice for good. The situations you find yourself in will test you, will push you to the edge where good and evil blur. But it's in those moments of testing that your true character is revealed. Remember the lessons we've learned. Obedience to authority, the loss of personal responsibility, dehumanization, and the seductive power of euphemisms. All of these can lead you down a dark path, but also remember that within you lies the power to resist, to ask questions, to act heroically even when the odds are against you. You don't need a cape or superpowers to be a hero. You need the courage to act, to choose light over darkness every day. And that, my friends, is what will make all the difference. It's not easy, it's not always clear, but it's necessary, because in the end, the story of your life isn't written by the situations you find yourself in. It's written by how you respond to them. So choose wisely. Be a hero, not a monster. And when you find yourself at that moral crossroads, as we all inevitably do, take a deep breath, look within, and remember the lessons we've learned today. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and until next time, keep asking questions, keep striving, and keep choosing the light. And once again, thank you all for your views, likes, comments, and shares.